All right, we're live. Say hi.
Hello, everybody. How y'all doing?
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Actually, forget good afternoon for a second. I knew today's interview was going to be great when I was at security here at the Broward County building, and they said, who are you meeting? I said, I'm here to meet Marty Kiar. I got an interview. And they literally, I just told Marty the story. She goes, oh my God, you are going to love Marty. Everybody here wishes they worked for Marty. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me so we can basically let all the folks out there know all the great things that happen in this office and how we can help our Broward community. I think it's great.
Yeah, and we are talking all about Broward today.
Absolutely.
Now the intro as promised. My name is Alex Vidal. I am president of Related ISG International Realty and host of the show you're watching today, Inquiring Minds Want to Know. As always, today's show is brought to you by Related ISG. If you want to work with a broker that's connected to some of the biggest real estate players, business people, athletes, motivators, mindset guys, Broward County officials, Miami-Dade County officials, call me, text me, DM me, email me, work for the best broker that's out there, or the best brokerage. I don't know if I'm the best broker, but the best brokerage that's out there. Marty, you ready?
I am ready.
All right, let's do it.
Oh, thank you, Alex.
All right,
I appreciate it.
10 questions all about Broward County. But before we get started, really interesting. Sure. I didn't know this, Marty. So in Broward County, you have served you served in the Florida House of Representatives. Mm-hmm. You served as a Broward County Commissioner. Mm-hmm. You were the mayor of Broward County.
Yes. And
now you're the Broward County Property Appraiser. You're the second mayor I have on the show.
Wonderful.
I had Francis Suarez from Miami on the show.
Oh, good guy.
He's a great guy.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you really love Broward County, man.
I do.
You really do. Tell us about your path to how you got here today.
And that's a great question. You know, Broward County is a very special place. More people live here than 13 states, the District of Columbia, and all U.S. territories except Puerto Rico.
Say that again.
Oh, more people live in Broward County than 13 states, the District of Columbia, and all U.S. territories except Puerto Rico. It's big.
Holy crap.
It really is. And you know, what makes us incredibly special is if you look at Broward County, it's really just a snapshot of America. America is this very massive place where you have people of different ethnicities, races, religions. You have folks of high net worth, folks of low net worth. Mm-hmm. You have people live on the beach, people live inland. And if you look at Broward County, it is basically a snapshot of what America looks like.
Now, we're going to talk about that.
Oh, absolutely.
In a few questions. But
sure.
How did you end up at this desk right now in the Broward County building?
Sure. Well,
I know you're so excited about Broward. I know.
No, I do. I love Broward. Well, I'll tell you, you know, I've been very blessed to have had parents that really basically brought me up to really want to be active and civically involved.
Okay.
And my dad, who's my hero in this world, I just think he is wonderful. He was the mayor of the town of Davie for a long time.
Okay.
And, you know, when he was the mayor of the town of Davie, he wanted to do two things. The first thing he wanted to do was make sure there was open space in the town of Davie so people could play and go to parks. Sure. And, you know, and you could have maybe 1 unit per acre, kind of where you live. And also he wanted to also make sure that there were bike paths throughout the town of Davie because he was worried that, you know, without bike paths and sidewalks that little kids and folks could get hurt.
Okay.
And one day I was just out of law school and I was jogging around the town of Davie. And I was jogging on the bike path that my dad had decided to build. And I was looking at all the open space that was out there and remembered how my dad would always fight to protect that. And I basically said, you know what, that's amazing. My dad made such a difference for the people of our community. I want to do the same thing. And so in 2006, I decided to run for the Florida House of Representatives. And felt very honored. At that time, it was District 97. There were about 9 cities in that district.
Okay.
And the folks of District 97 elected me to serve there. And I served in the State House for about 6 years. And I loved it up there. It's very neat to serve in the legislature because you get to basically advocate about big, important issues that are important to our community, whether it's education or healthcare or juvenile justice. But during that time, while I was up there, I got married. And we had our first child. Okay. And
you can't see it in the camera. He's got 2 daughters. They're back there.
Yeah. They are beautiful. I love them. I know you have 4 boys. Yeah. Keep your boys away from my daughters.
They're handfuls.
But they are the cutest little pumpkins. But when my oldest daughter was born, for the first couple years, you know, she was very young. Mm-hmm. But then when she was about 3, and this would have been about 2012. I remember I would leave for Tallahassee and she would grab around my leg and she'd cry. And I realized I was missing a whole lot of their lives. And so I thought about it. And right about that time, a county commission seat opened up. And I always thought about my dad, how he made a huge difference in local government. I wanted to follow in his footsteps. And I thought to myself, like, you know what, I love serving the legislature, but I want to go home and try to make decisions on a local level, really where the rubber meets the road. Mm-hmm. And I could be home with my growing family. Sure. And so I did, and I ran for the county commission, was fortunate enough to have gotten elected by the community out in Western Broward County. and loved serving on the county commission. I served on it for 4 years, and served as the mayor, and it was really just a great place where you got to do a whole lot of good for a whole lot of people, whether it was improving the airport or our infrastructure, whether it's advocating for the Everglades or whatever it was. You could do a lot. But then right about 2016, my predecessor, who is a wonderful person, Lori Parrish, she is retired now. She came to me and she said, Marty, I'm thinking about retiring. And I really would like somebody to run for my seat that I know would work hard, do a good job, but also care about the hundreds of people that work in our office. And
it's a very big office. There's a lot of people back in there.
It is, and we actually have another office, aside for in the other building, which has double the amount of people. And the folks here, they work very hard, but they're not wealthy folks. A lot of folks here, they take the bus to work, and they struggle to make ends meet, and they do such a good job. And Lori was worried that whoever came in wouldn't look out for them. And so I told her, I go, Lori, I feel so honored that you've asked me to run. I go, I have to talk to my wife, and can I get back to you? And so I went home, I spoke to my wife, and I decided to do it. And I have to tell you, I was elected in 2016, and of all the jobs I've ever had, this one I love the most, because you get to interact with everybody in Broward County, and you can literally help thousands upon thousands of people. It is such a cool job that lets you do a whole lot of good, and I love it.
Now, so I want to jump around, because I asked people, hey, I'm going to interview Marty, what questions do you have? So one is, one isn't. How many units, how many individual properties or units pay property taxes? Just out of curiosity, I'm interested in what the number is in Broward County. And the second question is, how do you appraise properties?
That's a great question. Well, the first is, there's about 700,000 individual parcels in Broward County.
700?
About 700,000 where people pay property taxes on.
Okay.
There are some exempt properties such as 501c3s and churches and other properties under state law that you can't tax. But there's about 700, there's about a little over 600,000 residential properties, and right about 80 to 90,000 commercial properties where people do pay property taxes on.
Okay.
And the way you determine the value of property, which is the way that people pay property taxes, it's the relation between two things: the value of the property that we set and the tax rate set by the local governments.
Okay.
So the higher the value of the property, the more taxes folks pay. The lower the value of the property, the lower amount of taxes they pay. And so what we want to do is just make sure we get it right. And the way you value property depends on what type of property it is. And I'll give you an example.
Okay.
If it is a property that changes hands, let's say somebody buys a property and it's an arm's length transaction. If we determine it's a qualified sale, basically what the value of that property was sold for represents the value of that property, then we'll use that as the value for tax purposes. So let's say a property sells for $500,000. We'll take that $500,000 if we think that's a qualified sale, and what we'll do is we'll knock 10% off of it, which is called the cost of sale. Those are things like realtor fees and things that have nothing to do with the value of the property. And now you get down to about $450,000 of value. And then what you do is you apply whatever exemptions they have. Let's say they have a homestead exemption, $50,000 off. And if they're a senior, you can take some more off. Or if they're veterans. And you get down to a taxable value to pay taxes on. That's with residential properties.
Okay.
With commercial properties, it's based on one. Then what occurs is if it's not I'll go back to. I apologize.
No, that's
If you're not dealing with a residential sale, you're just dealing with just existing property, like your home or my home, where it's been our home for some time. Then what you do every single year, you value them based on comparable sales from the year before. And so right now, January 1st just passed. And so what we're doing is we're looking at every single piece of property in Broward County. And if it hasn't changed hands, we're going to look at all the sales that took place the year before, and we're going to adjust them to meet the subject property.
Okay.
And those sales will give us a value for that property. And that's how we determine the value for tax purposes for that.
Wow.
If it's commercial property, you can do it based on comparable sales, but also on income.
Okay.
So, some commercial properties will share with us the amount of income that they receive or their vacancy rate. And we'll be able to use that to determine, for example, a value.
Okay.
And then you have some very specific properties where there are no comparable sales, and they're not income producing properties, but they're so unique. And they're new properties. And then what you can use is what's called the cost approach, where you figure out how much it costs to build it from the ground up to determine a value for tax purposes.
And you have to do that for 700,000 properties.
We do. And the folks out here do an incredible job in the work that they do.
Okay. Now, another question not on here. I'm sorry to divert off the questions, but it just struck me because I remember when I interviewed Mayor Francis Suarez, he's like, yeah, the one thing people don't know is that in Dade County, just in downtown, we're only at like, I forgot what the number was, like a certain percentage of the capacity that based under current zoning, how much more they could build.
Yeah.
Do you happen to know that number off the top of your head? Like if all zoning stayed the same and maybe this duplex or this house was zoned as a duplex, got knocked down, now you put 2 properties on there or whatever, how much more you can go?
Sure. Well, it's a little bit more difficult in this since Mayor Suarez is the mayor of Miami. In his city, that's it. But for me, I represent the whole county. There are 31 cities. And the only reason I bring that up is because the zoning in all 31 cities is different.
But I'm learning so much.
Sure.
There's 31 cities in Broward County?
There are. The largest is Fort Lauderdale, and the smallest is Lazy Lake. And
Lazy Lake.
It's such a neat city. It's really almost the size of a small neighborhood, and they're their own city. Okay. And so every city has different zoning. And so there are some restrictions in each city. Fort Lauderdale, for example, is almost built out. So you'll notice that they're actually building up. Mm-hmm. There's not a whole lot of land to build on. And so, they still have a significant amount of units that are available for them to build up on. So they can bring a lot more people in. But you have other areas, Davie and let's say Plantation. Mm-hmm. They can't build up. And there's not a whole lot of open space to grow. So they're pretty much built out. So most of the properties there just kind of change hands. Sure. And then you have some areas like Miramar, for example, which still has land to grow, and even Parkland and other areas where they can still build, which can still, bring more units in and folks in to be able to move in. But for the most part, overall, the majority of Broward County is really built out. There's not a lot of open space, a lot of open land. And so right now, most properties just change hands.
Got it. Now, let's continue talking in the Broward.
Sure.
You have been involved in Broward government since 2002. As stated, I forgot your exact position when you first started, but when you first started, before the legislature.
Yes.
How has Broward evolved over the last 17 years? And if you mentioned it when you opened up, how the demographic of Broward County has changed. How has that profile of resident changed from 17 years ago to today?
Well, I'll tell you what's amazing about Broward County. I kind of spoke about this before. I think that our diversity is what makes us very special. And if you look at our unemployment rate is right about 3%. We're lower than the Tri-County area. Mm-hmm. We are lower than Miami-Dade, than Palm Beach County. We're lower than almost every other county in the state of Florida. We're also lower than the state and national average. So people here are working. And I think one reason being is because people come from all over the world and they decide to make Broward County their home. And I always believe they take what they have best with them and bring it here. Okay. And that's something that makes us very, very special. And Broward County is very diverse. It's become more diverse over the past 17 years, past 20 years, and it's going to continue to get more diverse. And I think it's a great thing. Yeah.
And it wasn't always like that. It really has changed over the last few years.
Broward County really has. It has, but in a much better way.
Absolutely.
It has. So I am very proud of the makeup of our county, what our county looks like as a whole. And like I said, I think it makes us really special, and also I think it's been great for our local economy.
Yeah, it is. And I'm a Broward County resident myself. Absolutely. Property values, your forte. Where do you see property values? And this question came from Michael Citron. I don't know if you know Michael. He's a
great guy.
Great guy. Michael's like, you're going to interview Marty. He's great. He does a show himself. You should try to get on his show. But this is a question from him. Property values. Yeah. Where do you see property values in 2019 and 2020, and how is that going to affect the tax base?
Sure. Well, the one thing I could say, it's very difficult to speculate. No. But here's what we're doing. So I know that there's been a steady increase in property values over the past few years. For example, I can't remember the exact number, but I think it was about a 6 or 7% increase countywide. Last year, about an 8% increase the year before that. Okay. And that is when you're dealing with a county this size, when your property values go up 6%, 8%, that's a significant
it's a big increase. A big needle to move.
It is. And this year, it looks like things are still moving in the right direction, where values are still increasing. Okay. But what we're doing right now is, since January 1st is what we call our date of assessment. Okay. That's when we start determining what the value of all properties throughout the county. And so right now, all these folks out there in our office, they're basically valuing properties based on all the sales from last year. And within the next couple months or so, we'll come up with kind of a round number as to an estimation of where we are. And then we keep on solidifying it and based on the data that we review. But it does, so I can't give you an exact number just yet, but I can say that it looks very positive again for this year.
Great. Well, maybe we have to have another interview in a couple months on property values.
Oh, I would love it.
Now, you referenced Fort Lauderdale. We're in East Fort Lauderdale right now. We Related has several projects in Fort Lauderdale. and it's changed so much.
It has.
If you were to look at, not from a tax purpose, but just from a vision perspective, where do you see Fort Lauderdale in the next 5-10 years?
You know what? I think it all depends on the decisions that are made by the Fort Lauderdale City Commission and their new city manager. And I say that Fort Lauderdale's a great place to live. It really is. I mean, you have incredible beaches. There are tons of restaurants. There are wonderful places for people to take their families. I mean, it is just an awesome city. But the one issue that Fort Lauderdale is working on, and it needs to work on, is its infrastructure, its sewage, and others. And the reason being is because Fort Lauderdale did grow very, very fast. And the infrastructure is keeping up with it, but there are still some problems, and the infrastructure needs to be updated. And if the City Commission continues to make good decisions and really invest in its infrastructure, invest in its sewage, invest in, change the old rusty pipes, and to really to keep up to where our growth is going, then I think Fort Lauderdale is going to continue to be one of the best places in the world to live, without a doubt. But it's really, as long as they, and I have a lot of faith in the City Commission. They are good folks. They work hard. The mayor's a great friend of mine. As long as they continue to make infrastructure a priority, then Fort Lauderdale will continue to be a great place for folks to live.
And it's so, when you compare it to Miami or Palm Beach, it's like that hole in the donut where it's priced so great on the beach.
Oh, yeah.
Can't touch it. So it's amazing.
It is. Fort
Lauderdale, you can't
Lauderdale,
compare it to it.
It is. You know, Las Olas is one of my favorite streets on the face of the earth, and the parks in Fort Lauderdale are great. The beach is incredible, and everybody wants to live here. And what's interesting about Fort Lauderdale is a lot of the folks actually that are moving in now are empty nesters from out west.
Interesting.
So, I live in Plantation, you live in Davie, folks live in Weston. As their children are leaving and going to college or getting married or going out on their own, and now you have basically a husband and wife by themselves. A lot of them have a big home out west, and they want to relocate. And so many of them now are moving to downtown Fort Lauderdale because they love the lifestyle. So it is definitely a special place to live.
It is, and if you haven't been, definitely go.
Absolutely.
Homestead property exemption, you kind of mentioned it, is definitely one of the biggest benefits for us as property owners.
Absolutely.
But now there's a cap for investment properties.
Oh, yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that, because obviously realtors are watching this.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll tell you this. Well, first, the homestead exemption is incredibly important. It not only does it take about $50,000 of value off the tax so you don't pay taxes on, it can save you $800, $900, maybe $1,000 a year. But most importantly, it caps the value you're taxed on at 3% a year, or the consumer price index, whichever is lower. So this year, for example, the consumer price index was 2.1%. So what that means is, even if the market value of your home goes up 50, 60, 70, 80%, the value you're taxed on can't go more than 2.1%. It's a great thing that protects a whole lot of folks so they won't be taxed out of their homes. There's also what's currently in Florida law, and I'm so happy that this is there. And let me explain. It's called the 10% cap on commercial property.
Okay.
What happened was, in 2008, when I was in the legislature, at that time, our local real estate economy collapsed. And realtors from around the state came to every legislator, myself and the other folks who served up there, and Governor Chris, who was the governor at the time, and they said, look, we need to protect commercial properties. So would you put on the ballot an amendment that would cap the value of commercial properties at 10%, meaning that if, regardless of how high the commercial value went up, 50, 60, 70% each year, the value that is taxed on couldn't go up more than 10% except for the school portion of the tax bill.
Okay.
And that was put in the ballot. The people in 2008 voted overwhelmingly for it in Florida, and that came into effect. And the only problem at that time was there was a 10-year sunset provision in there, basically meaning that amendment, the 10% cap, was set to expire this year, actually today, January 1st, 2019. But fortunately, the Florida legislature last year put on the ballot this time a repeal of that sunset provision, so the 10% cap would go on for perpetuity. And in the last election, the people of Florida overwhelmingly voted to continue with the 10% cap. So what that means is, if you have commercial property and you've had it for a long time, there's actually a lot of value you don't have to pay taxes on in there because of that cap, because that's been in effect. Sure. And that can save, commercial properties a lot of money, small business a lot of money. We're trying hard to make ends meet. And at the same time, for all new existing properties, once you buy a property, it changes hands, it gets reset to the value of the property. But then going forward, that 10% cap is in place. It's there really to protect our small businesses. It's very important.
I love it. So invest. If you're a small business, you get a tax break.
Absolutely.
Now, this you may not want to answer, but let's go for it.
Answer everything. Absolutely.
Let's say a homeowner gets her tax bill and they're like, oh my God, that's crazy. My property's not worth that. And they want to challenge their tax bill.
Absolutely.
What are the Cliffnotes way of the process of challenging that?
Well, that's a great question. And, my belief is this shouldn't be an adversarial process. Mm-hmm. My view is at the end of the day, every value that we set, it should just be a fair value. Because people should only pay their fair share, nothing more, nothing less. Okay. And Broward County is a massive place, and the folks here do a very good job, but mistakes can occur. And if somebody gets let's say they get their tax bill or their trim notice, which we'll send out in August, that shows what the value of the property is. If they think we've made a mistake, I always tell folks, give us a call, come on down to our office, or we'll come to you, and we'll go through it together. And if we made a mistake, we'll adjust it accordingly. If not, we'll let you know exactly how we arrived at the value. And in many respects, we're able to work it out to where we can get to the correct value. Let me give you an example. Mm-hmm. Let's say we don't know at times what the inside of somebody's home looks like. And let's say we value a home based on comparable sales from the year before. Okay. They would then come and they say, look, my property is not worth this. And this is why. The inside of our home, they'll bring pictures, is dilapidated. There's been a lot of damage, there's mold, whatever it is. And that right there is evidence for us to say, okay, you're right. We're able to decrease the value, to make it to where they have more of a fair tax bill and their tax bill's not too high. And but if we can't agree, and I'll always meet with everybody, and so will our staff, but if we come back and we say, look, we went through it, all the data shows this is the correct value, then folks have a couple other options. They can file a petition, which what's called the Value Adjustment Board of Broward County, and that's like an independent body that acts as almost like a judge in disputes between the property appraiser's office and a taxpayer. And you go before a special magistrate, and and they'll look at the evidence and they'll say, okay, the property appraiser is correct or the property appraiser is not correct, and now it's going to be reduced. The other thing that folks do is they can always take us to circuit court. But for me, I would much rather work it out beforehand. Like I said, because it's just important that we get to the correct value of property, and that people don't overly pay, because that would be very unfair.
Got it. I love it. He is one of the most approachable people you will ever meet.
Oh, thank you.
I told you it happened at security the second we came in.
Oh, thank you, Alex. 2
questions left. One is a multi-pronged question, because Broward County is super large, and it's one of the fastest growing counties in the country. Oh, yeah. So 3 questions under that. How has real estate played a role in that growth? I think you addressed the challenges with the infrastructure, and how can us as realtors make the biggest impact in helping the county become even better?
Absolutely, that's a great question. Well, first, real estate, I've always believed this, ever since I was in the legislature until now. Real estate, I think, is really the backbone of our entire economy. If you notice, when the real estate market crashes, your economy crashes with it. But when people are buying properties and the market is hot, then unemployment goes down and the economy does better. And it just makes a whole lot of sense. If somebody sells a property, somebody buys a property, they're not just going to buy the property. They're going to go to the store and they're going to put beds in there and chairs in there, and they're going to basically, create economic opportunities throughout our county. And so it's very, very important that our real estate market continues to thrive. And realtors play a huge role. One, helping people get their dream of owning a home or a business, but also I have to say, for our purposes, realtors are amazing because you're almost like my window to the world. Okay. And we kind of spoke about this a little bit before. You have a homestead exemption, but you have many other exemptions as well where people can save money. You have also a portability that gives people the opportunity to move back and forth and get a significant reduction in their tax bill. And the only reason we're able to reach so many people is because realtors will send them our way. Somebody closes on a home, they'll say, you know what, congratulations, now you should go apply for a homestead. Give Marty a call. And we help thousands upon thousands of people every single year because of realtors.
I have to apply for homestead exemption now. Actually, now that I'm here, I might as well do it.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll get that taken care of ASAP.
Now, you said the portability. I've never really understood how portability works. How does that work exactly?
Portability is so important. Last year we had about 11,000 properties where portability was used. Okay. Which was more than anywhere else in the state. And what that does is it gives people the opportunity to move from one home to another home and not be taxed out of that home. And I'll explain why. Okay. When you buy a home, you file for homestead. And not only do you get about $50,000 of value taken off the tax roll you don't pay taxes on, but the most important part is it caps the value of your tax on at 3% a year of the Consumer Price Index. So what happens is, over time, the value you're taxed on stays low while your market value gets high. So you have all this value in between you don't pay taxes on. Well, what you can do is if you want to buy a new home or move into a new home and move your homestead, what you can do if you buy a home of equal value or greater value, you can take all that value you don't pay taxes on and move it to your new home and not pay taxes on it.
Okay.
If you buy a home of lower value, you take a portion of it. So I'll give you an example. Let's say you bought your home in Weston Hills, and let's say you bought it in the 1990s. And let's say you bought it for $200,000 in 1990. I'm not sure what they were at that time, and now over time you've had that cap in place. It was your homestead. So let's say now you pay taxes on $250,000, but the market value of your home is $750,000. So now you have $500,000 of value you don't pay taxes on.
Okay.
Now you're one of those empty net nesters we spoke about. You want to move to Fort Lauderdale, and you want to buy a home for $750,000, a really beautiful condo. So you sell your property here in Weston, you buy this new condo for the same price. But what you can now do is you can take that $500,000 you weren't paying taxes on, move it to your new condo now here, so your tax bill is only going to be basically on $250,000. It's going to be similar to what it was in Weston. If you didn't have that portability, your tax bill would have been about 3 times the size of what it would have been in Weston.
What's that process like? What do you need to do in order to do that?
Oh, it's very easy. There's an application that folks need to fill out, and they can either go on our website and check it out. They can also give me a call. They can email me. We'll send it right on over to them. And all they have to do is when they file their paperwork to file for their new homestead, there's also another document that we give them for portability. They fill that out, and then we just transfer it over.
Great. There you go.
Absolutely.
Marty, thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
My gosh, this was
Realtors, when you're working with buyers, these are the types of questions we get about property taxes all the time. Listen to this, learn it, ingrain it in your head, because now you're more educated to be able to provide those answers to your buyers. Marty, thanks. Any parting words as I walk behind the camera?
Well, I just want to thank you, Alex, so much for giving me the opportunity to basically talk with the community. Kind of like I said before, the realtors are our window to the community. When folks like yourself give me an opportunity to talk to a number of folks, we're always able to help more people. And so I know that I know that I'm actually going to get some phone calls and emails from folks who are seeing this, and I know we're going to be able to help them. And if I can help anybody out there, please email me anytime at martykiar@bcpa.net. That's martykiar@bcpa.net. Or call me at 954-357-6904. I just want to thank you so much again. I want to thank everybody for giving me the opportunity to serve as their Broward County property appraiser. Thank you all so much, and Happy New Year.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, Marty.